Hey, this is the pre-read video for Winds of Hope. It's by Katie Duffield. You can also, remember, if this website, if Ed doesn't work for some reason, it could be overloaded, you can always click on the PDF version. And in the PDF version, you're going to scroll for Inventors at Work, Unit 1, you're going to scroll to page 36. And 37, that'll start you off, and then you can just work your way through. All right, I'm going back to here though. All right, when you were reading, we're going to look at the vocabulary. We're going to talk about the reading topics that you need to look out for, mainly text structure as you read through this piece, such as cause and effect, sequential order, chronological order, compare and contrast, cause and I already said cause and effect. And we're also going to start thinking about author's purpose this week. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to go back to this pre-read page that you can start on the regular story. So this Winds of Hope was originally a magazine article, but it's based off of a book, a really much larger book, and it's a true story. And they say that magazine articles give information about a topic, person, or event, but that makes it sound like all magazine articles are nonfiction, whereas I know Highlights magazines are definitely full of creative writing. There are lots of creative writing magazines out there. So no, magazines are not always informational. But if you're a magazine article that is informational, as most informational texts do, they either tell their events in a sequence, first, second, third, fourth, or they tell them in chronological order. And early in the day, this happened. Then later, this happened. Finally, this happened, which it's more like chrono means time. So chronological is in time order. Some magazines will show, well, this happened, which caused this happen to happen later. That's cause and effect, etc. And then, of course, we've all read magazines, or I hope you have, and they've got tons of visuals throughout. This is a very special magazine because it has like full page pictures everywhere. When we look, they can have, when you look at a magazine, as any genre has, they have words that are specific to the topic of that story. So this one is about rural, that means in the country, citizens in Malawi, Africa. That's a country in Africa. So they're living out in the country in the nation of Malawi. So I just used the word rural. There's some other words in there that are very specific to this lifestyle. They live near a bunch of farms, so they have to keep the farms working. So they use the word irrigate to when they talk about watering the farms. So it's going to have genre-specific or topic-specific vocabulary. All right, so let's look at the cover, the picture. Now, not all stories have pictures, but a lot of them do. And it's just because humans love images, and you have to learn how to read images this year, not just pictures. My husband's vacuuming in the background. All right, so I see the title is Winds of Hope. Wind of Hope. Hope is something that we think is good, that like good is going to happen. And this wind maybe is filled with the goodness that might come. Winds of Hope. Well, you can get a lot from just that article. Like I can imagine you can get a lot from just that title. I can imagine a wind blowing in magical things, or a wind bringing in more workers maybe to harvest a field. But so far we know that winds have something to do with goodness coming, or we assume. And then we can see that this, what you're like, what is that? And then when you look closer, there's a shaft here. This is actually, I believe, a windmill. And windmills are used to, they rotate around, and they produce electricity or other types of energy. All right, so I'm going to go back. Now that we've seen the cover and we've talked about maybe what the title might mean, we can set a purpose for our reading. Before you read anything, you always set a purpose. You may not think that you're doing it, but you should start practicing setting purposes by acknowledging what you're doing at the beginning of a book, so you can really hone in on some things that would be a good idea right before you crack it open. Like if I'm really excited about reading a story, and I know it's a fairy tale, and I love fairy tales, and this one has a polar bear in it. I'm really excited to figure out, how does a polar bear fit into a fairy tale? By the way, it's east of the sun, east of the sun, west of the moon, or something. Fantastic fairy tale. All right, so let's set a purpose. So we know that this time we're going to read about winds bring hope. Okay, so winds bring hope somehow to a community. You don't ever have to write this in on yours, but you can. It's so cool that you can write in your textbook online. And I'm thinking, that's a windmill. So what type of hope can it bring? So windmills can bring hope of power to run electricity, right? So let's do that. I mean, I know they do. Windmills can bring hope of making power to create electricity. I like that word better. Okay, so maybe this community needs more electricity. All right. So now we have a purpose for reading. We have a prediction. We're using our cover and our title, and we're ready to go. Except there are words involved in this text that we may not know the answers to. We may not know the meaning to, I mean. Now, whenever you see a word highlighted within the text, let me show you what that would look like. There aren't any on this full spread right here, but we have one here. You can click on any of them in the digital textbook, and it'll give you a definition, which is helpful, but it's not near as helpful as a picture. So I'm going to show you the picture cards for each of these words. So I'm going to go over. Oh my gosh. Oh, here it is. It's like, oh. Okay, so here we have irrigate. Irrigate is what you call it when you are watering the plants on a farm. I irrigate my home garden. Actually, I unlike this. So this contraption is up above. They roll them out. They're super cool to notice when you're driving through a farm community. And then they spray down below, right here. But regular old gardeners and your parents, we can bury drip lines, which is like burying a hose that has like holes stabbed into it. Or you can lay soaker hoses under the ground too, which is like a hose that leaks all the way around, like all along it. It just like leaks when you turn it on. So that's a type of irrigation when you're purposefully giving water to plants. Usually, though, not with your watering can. Another word that you'll see is inspector, to look closely at something. So this lady's inspecting the tomatoes, just like Sherlock Holmes and Sherlock Gnome inspect situations and events to make sure nothing funny went on. All right, I'm going next word. Photographed. I think we all know what a photograph is. So we can see a photograph, and to be photographed is to make that photograph come about, to click the button on your camera. Prestigious. Sometimes people say prestigious. Do you see how this kid, he like has this trophy? It's not a trophy that's easy to get, like Little League baseball just for participation trophy. Something that's prestigious or prestigious is something that was hard to get. You had to work really hard for it. Moving on, an auditorium. This is an auditorium where people go to present lectures, giant classrooms, or truthfully, our cafeteria at Hill is a type of auditorium. But it's the one at Anderson is so much better, where they have productions. If you go to Bass Concert Hall or any of the other ones, those are auditoriums, a large room where an audience can sit. Then we have impoverished. Impoverished, when I think of impoverished, I think of being poor, but like this is extremely poor. And lots of people go through times where they are impoverished during their lives. Some people, unfortunately, spend their whole lives impoverished, super poor. Like they can't afford food on a daily basis, or they can't afford to have electricity or water on a daily basis. And, we're done with those. All right. And the last thing I want you to remember is to remember how the author, what is the author's purpose? What are they actually trying to do? And don't just think persuade, inform, or entertain, but like literally, why did they write this article? Get down to the nitty-gritty. And one way you can figure that out is by figuring out, notice, did they tell this story in chronological order? Like something happened here. I see the year 2001. Did they talk about something that happened in 2001, and then maybe later that month something happened, and then later that month again? Or is it like instructions, like a sequence? Or is there a cause and effect? And really just exploring what happened in the story and how it is told will help you figure out the author's purpose. Well, I hope this helps. And when you remember, you can start on this page right here, or if Ed is being finicky, you can just open up the PDF of Inventors at Work, Unit 1, and you can just go to page 37 and 38 and go ahead and begin reading this text. We're only going to read this one story, so when you get to the part where it's talking about something about wheelchairs, we're going to stop right there. You don't have to answer any of these questions, by the way, in the digital textbook. All right, see you later. Got to figure out where you are now so I can press off.